I booked a Royal Caribbean cruise to the Bahamas with my fiancée.
On the third night, we had the worst fight of our relationship. She stormed out after I said something I immediately regretted, leaving me alone in our windowless interior cabin.
Hours passed. She never returned, probably staying with her sister 2 decks up.
I threw my phone on the nightstand and took a hot shower, hoping the steam would calm me down.
When I returned to that cold bed, the stress caught up with me.
I've suffered from sleep paralysis since my early 20s, triggered only when I'm emotionally overwhelmed. My mind stays awake while my body shuts down completely, trapping me between consciousness and sleep. I can see, hear, feel everything, but cannot move.
I dozed off within minutes, exhausted from the fight and lulled by the ship's gentle rocking.
Then I woke up, eyes open, fixed on the ceiling.
My chest crushed beneath invisible weight, arms and legs locked in place, completely unresponsive.
The cabin felt wrong. The bathroom lights were off.
I clearly remembered leaving that bathroom light on, door cracked to cast a faint glow.
Then I felt wind on my face. From above, like someone had breathed directly onto me.
My eyes moved toward the ceiling vent.
For seconds, only darkness in the metal grating. Then bright green eyes appeared, hovering in the shadows, fixed directly on me, unblinking and glowing.
The vent cover creaked softly, shifting outward, screws groaning.
Dust slid down onto my pillow in thin gray streaks.
Then a head slowly emerged. A completely bald man inside that vent.
His scalp reflecting the faint emergency lighting, like polished bone.
His face looked wrong. Something trying to look human, but not quite understanding how.
His breathing was wet and heavy, echoing in the ducts above. He watched me, head tilted, like a curious animal examining prey.
Then his shoulders pressed through. I heard bones cracking as his upper body contorted through the narrow space.
His arms dropped down, too long, extending further than any normal person should reach.
Fingers thin and bony, nails darkened with something old and dried.
His hand descended inch by inch, reaching toward me. Cold rolled off his skin. His expression was horrible. Not anger exactly, but desperate hunger, like he needed to touch me.
My throat moved as I tried to force out sound. Nothing came, just a strangled wheeze.
His index finger stopped less than an inch from my nose.
I could see every detail. Skin pulled too tight, darkness under the nail. He blinked, and I heard the wet sound of eyelids sliding over those green eyes.
Then he said in a raspy, demonic voice from deep in his chest,
Most of them scream and leave, but you stayed. I like that.
Lightning struck in the hallway. No, the ship's emergency lighting flickered on with a sudden buzz.
My body jolted upright as I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat.
The bathroom light was on. The vent was sealed completely, flush against the ceiling with no sign of disturbance.
I didn't spend another second there. I grabbed my phone and key and ran into the hallway. I stayed in an open lounge until sunrise.
We made up that morning. I never told her what happened.
3 weeks later, at 2 a.m. and unable to sleep, I Googled that cruise ship and our cabin number.
One review sent shivers down my spine. Someone mentioned waking in that exact cabin with the overwhelming feeling of being watched from the ceiling vent.
A second review mentioned vivid nightmares about a bald man in that same cabin.
My hands shook. I'd never told anyone those details. But sometimes, when I lie awake in small enclosed spaces, I feel a cold draft fall straight down onto my face.
Even when there's no vent above me, no air conditioning running, no logical explanation.
When that happens, it takes a pill to fall asleep, and I never turn off all the lights anymore.
I was on a 7-day Caribbean cruise on the Oceanic Empress when this happened on night 5. Everything had been perfect until that night.
But I couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m., I decided to walk around the ship to tire myself out.
Past midnight, the ship felt like a ghost town. Only distant slot machines and constant engine hum.
That's when I noticed the stairwell. I'd taken a wrong turn near the rear, ended up in a service corridor.
The stairwell was unmarked, just a heavy metal door with a small porthole window and a chain draped across it.
A faded sign read, "Crew only, restricted access." The door was covered in rust, the light above flickering weakly.
The chain wasn't locked. I told myself it was probably just a maintenance area, maybe a shortcut back. I ducked under and pulled the door open.
The temperature dropped immediately, at least 10 degrees cooler. The air smelled like mildew, metal, and old paint.
The stairwell was narrow with yellow safety railings that looked decades old. The paint was a dull green instead of the bright white and blue I was used to.
Normal ship sounds were muffled here. It felt like I'd stepped into a completely different vessel.
I descended, hand trailing the cold railing. Paint peeled in long strips, revealing rust underneath.
Lights became sparse. Entire sections sitting in shadow.
I passed locked doors with labels that didn't make sense. Storage B7, crew quarters minus deck 2.
But we weren't supposed to have a deck 2. The lowest passenger deck was deck 3. Then I heard footsteps ahead, echoing up from deeper down, and voices, faint, overlapping, but wrong, too flat, too echoey.
At the bottom, I found a long corridor stretching in both directions.
There were people in the hallway, maybe 5 or 6, all walking in the same direction. I felt relief at first, but it died in my throat. Their clothing looked old, like the 80s or 90s. Crew members wore white and gold uniforms I didn't recognize instead of navy blue. Passengers wore formal wear, sequined dresses and suits.
But their movement was synchronized perfectly, steps matching exactly, arms swinging at the same rhythm. They were pale with wet-looking skin.
I walked toward them, footsteps echoing. They should have heard me, should have turned, but they just kept walking, turning into cabin doors, emerging from others, looping endlessly.
I got close and said, "Excuse me," loud enough they definitely should have heard. Nothing. No response, no acknowledgement.
I walked right past one woman in a green sequined dress, close enough to touch her shoulder. She didn't turn, just stared ahead with glassy, unfocused eyes.
That's when I noticed her feet weren't touching the ground. She hovered maybe half an inch above the carpet.
One cabin door was open. Against better judgment, I looked inside. The cabin was frozen in time, suitcases open on the bed, clothes half unpacked, dated electronics on the nightstand. A calendar on the wall showed June 1987.
On the desk, a passenger manifest with the ship's name, Oceanic Empress.
The date, June 14th, 1987, nearly 40 years ago. Behind me, hallway sounds changed. Footsteps got louder, more frantic, voices calling names, confused conversations, people asking about a lifeboat drill.
The cabin door slammed shut in my face.
I grabbed the handle, locked or jammed. The lights flickered to dim red emergency lighting. Alarm bells rang, old-style fire alarms. A PA system crackled with a man's voice.
Calling all passengers to muster stations for a mandatory lifeboat drill.
Through the door, I heard the hallway filling with chaos, panic, people running, shouting, crying. I looked through the peephole and saw the hallway packed with passengers wearing old orange life vests, pushing and shoving towards stairwells.
Their faces were pale, wet, terrified. Some looked directly at the door with completely white eyes.
A face appeared at the peephole, inches from my eye. A middle-aged man with water dripping from his hair, mouth open in a silent scream. He pressed against the door.
Why aren't you at the muster station? Don't you hear the alarm?
His voice was distorted, like talking underwater.
Water seeped under the door, spreading across the carpet. The room tilted sideways, like the whole vessel was listing.
I spotted a connecting door and threw my shoulder against it. On the fourth hit, the lock gave way. I tumbled through into another cabin, empty, dark, but modern. Current furniture, flat-screen TV, new navy blue carpet. I crossed back into the present.
Behind me, I still heard screaming, banging, rushing water. I didn't look back.
I ran out into a normal hallway. Clean carpet, bright white lights, contemporary music from a nearby bar.
I sprinted up the nearest stairwell and burst onto the pool deck, where people were drinking and laughing around the hot tub.
I stood there doubled over, breathing hard. I looked behind me, at the door.
Richard. Just a normal door with a sign. Deck 6, cabins, 6001, 6089.
No stairwell to old crew quarters. Just a normal passenger deck.
I was completely dry. My clothes, my shoes, everything. I should have been soaking wet.
At guest services the next morning, I carefully asked about the ship's history.
The Oceanic Empress had been in service since 2003.
When I mentioned deck 2, her smile faltered.
There is no Deck 2. The decks start at 3 and go to 15.
Later, I searched online in the ship's library. I found archived news articles about a different ship called the Oceanic Empress that operated in the 1980s.
In June 1987, it had struck something while crossing the Caribbean. Emergency protocols activated. Passengers ordered to muster stations. In the chaos and dark, several people went missing, likely fallen overboard. The ship was decommissioned shortly after and scrapped.
But there were forum posts from the current Oceanic Empress passengers mentioning strange areas that didn't match deck plans. Crew-only sections that seemed older than they should be.
One post made my blood run cold. Someone described a corridor on the lower decks where passengers were dressed in 80s clothing, moving in loops, disappearing into cabins.
When they tried to ask for help, no one could see them. Like they were the ghost, not the other way around.
That was 3 years ago. I've never been on a cruise since. Sometimes I wonder if I actually made it out of that corridor.
Sometimes I wonder if I'm still down there, walking in loops, and everything since has just been my mind trying to make sense of being trapped.
I was 26, working as a bartender on a cruise ship, running routes between Miami and the Caribbean.
This happened on a Tuesday night, halfway through a 10-day cruise, at least 100 miles from land.
It was my night off. Around 2:30 a.m., I decided to swim in the main pool.
The pool deck was nearly deserted, deck chairs stacked to the sides, dim night lighting, giving everything a blue-green glow. The main pool was lit from below, water glowing and shifting with the ship's movement.
One person in a crew uniform at the far end turned and left before I could see who it was.
I set my towel down and slid into the warm water.
Swimming alone felt amazing. I could do actual laps.
I floated on my back, staring at stars, feeling completely relaxed. Then the water temperature dropped suddenly, not gradually, all at once, like I'd swum through an invisible barrier into freezing water. A current appeared, swirling around my legs, pulling toward the center.
I looked down but couldn't see anything beyond a few feet.
I looked down but couldn't see anything beyond a few feet. Something brushed against my leg underwater, soft and cold, like fabric dragging across my skin.
I jerked away and spun around. Nothing. The water was empty.
The ship's engines changed tone, dropping to a lower frequency I felt in my chest.
Everything got quieter. I looked around, completely alone now.
Lights seemed dimmer, shadows longer. Time to get out.
But as I turned toward the ladder, I saw someone else in the pool.
I hadn't heard them enter. They were just suddenly there, at the deep end, partially obscured by the diving board shadow, floating motionless. I called out.
Hey, didn't hear you come in.
No response. I swam closer. Their skin looked too pale, almost luminescent in the underwater lights.
They weren't moving at all, positioned vertically in the water like standing on the bottom. But we were in the deep end, 12 feet down.
Are you okay? Do you need help?
Still no response. Their hair floated upward instead of on the surface like they were underwater, even though their face was clearly above the waterline. Their eyes were open, staring straight up, not blinking. The water around them looked darker. Temperature dropped even more. I could see my breath.
I swam closer against every instinct. Got within 10 feet.
Hey, are you all right? They turned their head to look at me.
Their skin was bloated and waterlogged, puffed up around eyes and cheeks. Lips were blue-gray.
Eyes clouded over like milk. Mouth slightly open with water inside, like lungs were full.
This person was floating like a body. But their eyes tracked my movement.
Then their mouth moved, words bubbling up through water, even though they were above surface.
Why did you leave me down here?
I froze. The person started sinking, slowly descending deeper, hand reaching up toward me, fingers spread wide, beckoning.
I looked down through the water, and my mind went blank.
More people at the bottom, at least 6 or 7, all standing, looking up at me, arms reaching upward, mouths moving.
They started rising, swimming, or floating upward, pale faces getting closer.
I could see their clothes now. Old crew's uniforms, formal wear, bathing suits from decades ago, all with that same bloated, drowned appearance.
Cold! Help! Why won't you help us?
It hurts! Please save me!
I'm so alone. So cold.
I tried to swim toward the ladder, but the current pulled hard toward the deep end.
Hands grabbed my ankles from below, cold fingers wrapping around my skin.
I kicked hard, but more hands grabbed my calves, my thighs, pulling me down.
I went under briefly. I could see them clearly, faces surrounding me underwater, white eyes staring.
Join us! So cold! Help me! Don't leave! Come down!
I kicked with everything I had and broke the surface, gasping and choking. I swam desperately for the ladder. More hands grabbed, slowing me down. I reached the ladder and grabbed the bottom rung, hands slipping on wet metal. They pulled me back. I looked back and saw them at the surface. At least 10, heads bobbing, arms outstretched, faces full of desperation, anger, bleeding. I pulled myself up with strength I didn't know I had. I climbed out and collapsed on the deck, coughing up water, shaking uncontrollably.
I looked back at the pool. The water was still and empty. Normal blue glow, no figures, nothing. Just a regular pool.
I found a security officer and must have looked insane. Soaking wet, shaking, teeth chattering.
I tried to explain. He asked if I'd been drinking.
We walked back to the pool together. Completely normal, clean, still empty.
I couldn't sleep. I sat on my bunk and started searching for information about the ship.
15 years ago, before refurbishment and renaming, it was called the Caribbean Star.
In 2009, a rogue wave hit during a crossing from San Juan to Miami. The pool deck was damaged.
Several passengers in the pool were swept overboard. 7 people total. Bodies never recovered. I found crew forms, multiple posts about the pool.
One crew member wrote about seeing figures around 3 a.m., describing them as wrong and too still.
The next day, I found Carlos, an older crew member who'd been working ships for 20 years. I asked about the pool. He gave me a long look and asked quietly,
"You asked about the pool. I have to ask you, were you swimming last night?"
When I nodded, he sighed. He told me crew members who'd been around long enough knew not to use the main pool after midnight.
He said the ship's water systems pulled directly from the ocean, filtered and heated, but still ocean water. The same ocean where those passengers drowned.
Some old-timers believe the water remembered, that it carried something with it.
That was 5 years ago. I quit 3 months later.
I tried to swim in the ocean once, about a year later. Got waist deep and felt hands on my ankles.
Full panic attack right there in the water. Haven't been swimming since.
Sometimes I still have nightmares about being pulled under, about those faces, about cold water filling my lungs.
And sometimes, when I'm taking a shower or washing my hands, I feel that same cold sensation on my legs, like something's touching me from the drain.
I know what I saw wasn't a hallucination. Those people were real sand, or had been real once.
Part of me wonders if I left something of myself in that pool with them.
Sometimes late at night, I still hear them calling my name.